It's me, Mario!
Look, man, it's Super Mario 64. Obviously, Super Mario 64 is regarded highly in the pantheon of gaming. Like, duh, you don't need Video Games YouTube Man to tell you that. But I really wanted to camp out on what makes Super Mario 64 so much greater than most games, and why I legitimately believe it belongs in the National Archives as a historical piece of media. Or something. I honestly didn't look into the National Archives that hard. I just wanted to name drop something more important than the Video Game Hall of Fame. But upon further research, Super Mario 64 ain't in the Video Game Hall of Fame yet. Obviously, the OG Super Mario Bros. Is in there, but comically enough, Super Mario Kart has beaten SM64 in. Anyways, with that aside... The year is 1996. There's a high chance that you just had the best Christmas of your life, and now that hot Nintendo 64 is ready to take you into the world of 3D gaming with its likely pack-in card of Super Mario 64. Obviously, Super Mario 64 wasn't actually the first 3D platformer. That accolade typically goes to the PS1's Jumping Flash. However, the 1990 PC game Alpha Waves may truly take that credit. It's also worth mentioning 1994's Geographic Seal, made by the same people behind Jumping Flash, and 1995's Bug, neither of which really resemble the 3D platformer as we know it today, but could technically fit the description in a pre-SM64 world, and maybe more importantly, can show just how large the gap was between what was there previously and what SM64 ushered in. While they were released after SM64, it's also worth looking at Crash Bandicoot and Bubsy 3D, which were released not long after. These games were developed concurrent with SM64, and you can see by comparing them, especially with Bubsy 3D, that not only did Super Mario 64 get 3D platforming right, but the contemporaries were still very much getting it wrong. You see, I think it kind of gets lost in the history that SM64 is kind of insane for the time and the games around it. Sure, it blows everything around it out of the water in most regards, but it really floors me that this level of movement and fluidity was made when the contemporaneous releases looked and played like, this. It took a while for the rest of the industry to catch up once developers had seen SM64, and by the time 1998 rolled around, we were fully in the era of hub world-based 3D platformers with collectathon aspects. I really doubt that I need to go on too long about the legacy of SM64. It's the highest seller for the N64, likely because it was sold as a bundle, but you know, success is success. It kickstarted a genre that was clamoring to try and walk in its footsteps, and nostalgia or no, it was a defining point for mid-90s gaming and has stood the test of time. Rightful complaining about the camera controls aside, but honestly, they're not that bad, dude. What I think is more interesting is how, in the vacuum that was the infancy of the genre, SM64 got so much right, and for multiple years, the games around it could maybe only get half of what SM64 did right. You're free to like whatever you like, but let's not sit here and pretend that Jersey Devil or Croc have a shine on what SM64 had brought to the table. In my opinion, the 3D platformer genre really didn't catch up to the bar SM64 set until 1998 gave us both Banjo-Kazooie and Spyro the Dragon, and technically Sonic Adventure 1, which I know we Burgerland residents didn't see until 1999, but from the perspective of it taking a new jump in console technology to even get something close to SM64's quality, it's worth noting. Also, Sonic Adventure 1 is good, actually, and you are welcome to fight me on it, and I will cry when you use mean words. I don't want to drag out this section too long, but I do want to take a look at what makes SM64 such a top-notch experience. For starters, it runs clean. Obviously, it does have its lag here and there, but for the most part, and especially given its contemporaries, this son of a gun runs silky smooth. Like, obviously I can dump on Bubsy 3D or Pitfall 3D for its herky-jerkiness, but even Spyro, a game I legitimately love, is just not as smooth moving or looking as SM64. Granted, if you prefer the jagged PS1 polygon style to N64's washed out, super compressed, unrecognizable textures, you're more than welcome to that opinion. I just think that for as ugly as SM64's textures are, it really keeps things looking and moving cleaner. The bigger thing is that SM64 really opened up a can when it came to how Mario was made to move in the third dimension. Mario's movement verb set vastly outclasses any game around it, and IMO would not be rivaled until Banjo-Kazooie showed up. This isn't even a deep dive into the most intricate of SM64 movement options, of which, oh, believe me, there are. Just on the surface, what the game gives you to play with is wild and expressive and so fluid in how they all work in tandem. Long jumps are not just a set distance, they are deterministic to speed and momentum. Being able to dive out of a jump, roll out, and then maintain that momentum allows for a sense of speed that other games may have never considered. Jumping options are nuanced as all hell. Triple jumps and side flips allow the players with more advanced grasp on the mechanics to traverse verticality in exciting, fluid ways. But also, newer players have the ability to crawl around to better dial in, say, backflips, helping those possibly inexperienced find ways to climb obstacles without the execution needed for other advanced jumps. This dynamic range of motion was designed in mind when it came to levels and platforming. Quote Miyamoto from an interview in an SM64 strategy guide. In the Mario games up to now, we've carefully crafted every stage and level down to the individual pixel. Take jumping, for example. Implementing jumping in 3D is really difficult. In earlier Mario games, we were able to measure the number of pixels Mario could jump and know exactly what was possible. But this time we had to design the level so that as long as your jump was close enough, you'd make it. It was too hard for the player to judge. This was a design change that we made in the middle of development, when the game was already very complete. There was a lot of booing from the staff. All parts of the bison are used here. Moves are very in tune to how they affect speed and momentum, with options both helping the continuation of a clean, speedy line of movement, and also options that can stop momentum or dial in for more precise movements. It's not exactly free from criticism though. I do find smaller movements more difficult as Mario has a wide turn radius. See, when Mario's at a complete stop, he will face and start moving at the next direction inputted, but anything less than a complete stop and he will make this sweeping arc to turn, which can easily mess up more critical movements. They mainly got it right though, especially for the times. This, to me, is what makes SM64 feel so timeless. Sure, it really wears its age the second you try to adjust the camera, and not having twin sticks and all, but holy shit, dude, this movement is light years ahead of anything else, and it's so tightly dialed in that you can go back to it today and just enjoy the fact that you do be kinda schmoovin'. I don't even think it's that hot of a take to say a Mario movement like this would only be tied in Sunshine and finally rivaled in Odyssey. There's a lot more to the game, but this is really what solidifies the enjoyment of playing it, what makes the platforming in 3D work, if you will. The use of the hub world helps complement this, as like if you have a system this good, then yeah, let me stomp around a bit and have my fun with it. Quote Miyamoto from the same strategy guide. Truth be told, we did something with Mario 64 that we don't usually do. We had children playtest it. We had a row of about 10 middle schoolers and we had them play around on the King Bob-omb stage for half a day, while we observed from behind. My child was one of them actually. But seeing him try dozens of times, over and over, to get up the unclimbable hill, as a parent, I couldn't help but think, geez, does this kid have any brains? Afterwards, we asked the children what they thought of the game, and they said it was fun, and that they wanted to play it again. Up to now, I think there's been this image with games that if you can't beat it, it's not a fun or good game, right? That's a philosophy we've stuck to at Nintendo too, but I figured that if the game was this fun to play, even if you weren't getting anywhere, well, it must be alright. Until this game, I was very skeptical about something like this being fun. So even if you aren't getting much of anywhere in the game, the act of playing it is so rewarding that you want to continue. And as someone who was a wee babby 7 years old or so when I first played it, yeah dude, that was pretty much my vibe. I'm gonna touch on it much later, but just the experience of running around a video game in 3D felt like magic back in those days. Like, what wizardry made this possible? So yeah, I'm really breaking new ground out here saying that SM64 is good, actually. Obviously, it's one of the most legendary games ever released in its own right, and not that it in any way needs more sugar heaped on it. But, if anything, I do want to make it known just how good the game is in context. As the years move on and people forget Rascal was ever released, it loses the importance it had contextually. In a vacuum, SM64 is an amazing game, but in the context of when it was released, it's an outstanding achievement. But that's it, right? It was a good game that shifted the way 3D platformers were made for a good number of years, but then things moved on, yeah? No! See, I'm not just here to retread that one of the most popular Nintendo games ever made was mad good. Obviously, that would be a waste of my time for speaking and editing. Super Mario 64 didn't just stop existing once the world moved on to the new millennium. Mario 64 has the honor of being the biggest speedrunning game around. It has, according to Speedrun.com, the status as the most active game, the largest amount of players, and the most runs submitted. I'm not going to give you a detailed history of Super Mario 64 speedrunning, as I am both not qualified to properly cover that, and there are many more videos out there that will do the trick, but I do want to at least go over it a bit and gush about what I love about it so much and what I find important. Super Mario 64 speedrunning is a very popular topic, but hopefully this can just be a bit of a primer for those few left unaware. SM64 speedrunning is broken into 5 major categories: 120 star, which is your 100% category, 0 star, which is your any percent category, and then 1 star, 16 star, and 70 star, all of which have different restrictions in place to make those star totals different goals. Those restrictions come in the form of what glitches/skips are allowed. 1 star doesn't allow the Dire Dock skip, kind of making it the 0 star backup category if you miss the skip. 70 star doesn't allow any star door skips, making you beat the game in the actual minimum number of stars required. And 16 star is a bit more specific, not allowing a BLJ to skip the 30 star door, but allowing it elsewhere, meaning that the runner must get 15 stars to spawn Mips the rabbit, use him to clip through the door, get a star in Dire Docks, then go on their merry BLJing way, skipping to the end. The 16 star specific rule set leads to it being seen as an introductory point for SM64 speedrunning, and quite honestly, I'd love to pick up learning it myself. Who knows if I ever will though. There are a number of subcategories for the game as well, which if you look at the URL on speedrun.com, it calls them memes, which I think is really cute. Obviously, there's a bushel of tricks and glitches that go into speedrunning SM64, but I wanted to go into BLJs for a second because I think it's just the coolest glitch ever. You see, when programming a game that has all the aforementioned speed and momentum, the coding has hard locks for certain things like forward speed, but it never coded a hard lock for negative speed. Because you can long jump with such low momentum that you can control yourself and go backwards in the air, you can chain together long jumps to go backwards in total. That by itself doesn't do much, but if you can wedge yourself in a way that you get all of the backward speed of the jump and none of the drag from being in air, you gather some real zoomies and send Mario shooting out like a rocket. This is the cornerstone of Mario 64 speedrunning, originally being discovered in 2000 with the first video proof showing up in 2003, all of which is archived on sm64.com, which, if you look at it, you can tell that we are absolutely talking about the early 2000s up in here. I'ma be real, I miss that era of RGB green font on black backgrounds. Rest in peace, Angel Fire. I think it's just so sick that this perfect storm of programming, landscape, and discovery created this insane movement option. It's not just a small utility glitch, obviously it was used to get past the infinite staircase, but it eventually became something so much greater. New ways to set up BLJs allowed for new ways to break the game apart, like BLJing up the stairs to get past the 50-star door, or side BLJing off the step to get past the 30-star door and the entrance to Dire Docks. Or this bonkers-ass sequence that clips through the column, then BLJs enough speed to zoom around the lobby and get past the 8-star door. I find these skips so exciting, not only for how they blow the game open, but also just the mechanics behind how they work. It grants a new level of understanding to Super Mario 64 the game, and it also adds to my already profound love for it. This is hardly the fullest application of BLJs though, and it only gets cooler. So in speedrunning, you have to perform the run in real time and unassisted. However, there is a secondary aspect of speedrunning, where you can instead run it using tool-assisted programming. The goal is still to complete the category as fast as possible, but since you can now program inputs frame by frame, it is less about what is physically possible with your hands, and more about what is the theoretical fastest route when all the chains are off. Sometimes this method, known as tasks, can loop back into helping create new strategies or glitches for real-time runs, but often it shows just how far the game can be pushed. If BLJs allow for negative speed with no negative speed cap, then what happens when the shackles of what's physically possible are cast off? We start traveling to parallel universes, baby. So on January 12th, 2016, some Super Mario 64 magician Panenkoic 2012, yes I know I'm not pronouncing it correctly, uploaded a video explaining how he did a task to get the Watch for Rolling Rock Star in Hazy Maze Cave with only a half A press. Stick a pin in that last part, we'll be getting back to it later. This video, sitting at 3.7 million views at the time of this recording, went nuclear for being the first big exposure to the public about how Mario can build up so much speed that he traverses theoretical copies of the map, known as parallel universes, to warp around to where he wants to be. Obviously, I'm not going to explain it all here. For a much more detailed look at how this works, please watch the aforementioned Pan and Coic 2012 video, or this video from Bismuth explaining how to get the Super Mario 64 Zero Star task to work. But I will throw in a small clip from Pan and Coic's video as a primer.
Wait, okay, so Mario's position is a floating point number, but it's converted to a short when the game uses it to test for collision with floor triangles. In other words, Mario's position can basically be any decimal number, but it's converted to an integer between negative 32,768 and positive 32,767 inclusive. So, any fractional portion is truncated, and numbers too big or too small are moved into this range using the modulo operator. Graphically, that means that the position used for floor detection is always inside of this box. So if Mario's in that box, then his actual position and the position used for floor detection are the same, albeit maybe off by a single fraction due to the truncation. But if Mario leaves that box, then his actual position and the position used for floor detection will separate, since the position used for floor detection will just loop back around to remain in the original box. So now I ask you this. Here's the course. So if Mario is standing way over here where there's no land, but the position used for floor detection is on land, can he stand over here? The answer is yes. As far as the game sees it, Mario is in fact above land over here because the game actually checks for land over here. So, for all intents and purposes, there is essentially land over here, a copy of the original map, and this is what we call a parallel universe, or a PU. And this applies to every one of these boxes, so there's actually a grid of nearly infinite PUs.
But this is no longer about beating the game as fast as possible. As Pan and Coic says, this is about getting the star in as few A presses as possible. So what's that all about? Isn't speedrunning the end of the line? No! Super Mario 64 speedrunning brought us a bevy of new ways to play and interact with Super Mario 64. Speedrunning is a common avenue for a lot of games to have glitches discovered, but it's important to keep in mind that these discoveries come from the need to do things faster. So what might be discovered if the goals are changed? This is what Pan and Coic also brought to the public's attention alongside parallel universes. What if there were more ways to play Super Mario 64 than just casually and speedrunning? Enter the A Button Challenge, a competition to find how to complete the game or segmented objectives with as few uses of the A button as possible. Off the bat, it's worth mentioning that while Pan and Coic is the obvious poster child for the A Button Challenge, he is by no means the creator. What's cited as the first mention of completing stars with minimal A presses is Walton Dell's absolutely early 2000s Super Mario 64 website detailing some tricks on Bob-omb Battlefield. Oh baby, have I missed you, Internet 1.0. It is also worth noting that Pan and Coic is by no means the only person involved in the A Button Challenge, as other notable names with healthy YouTube content include Tyler Kenny and Bad Boot, the latter of which has a fantastic commentated video explaining how to get into the secret aquarium in 0 A presses. See, with time no longer being of the essence, a new way of thinking about Super Mario 64 is unlocked, and alongside it, an entirely new set of glitches and strategies. What a speedrunner may not be interested in investing because it does not lose time, an ABCer may find useful as time no longer matters. This is where the breaking of Super Mario 64 truly goes nuclear. For example, in this Bad Boot video, it explains a glitch discovered in the Wii Virtual Console version, where the point value that determines the platform height is not calculated exactly the same way in the original cart and properly emulated versions. Basically, because the calculation decides to round its point values differently, over time, these platforms in Bowser and the Fire Sea very slowly start rising past their original placement, thus allowing Mario to reach the pole without burning an A-press. This method does require days plural for the platforms to rise far enough off the ground to make this work. But time doesn't matter here, only A-presses do, so it's a relevant discovery. And if anything about that sounds mad cool to you, looking into the ABCs is absolutely something you should do. Both the Pan and Coic Watch for Rolling Rocks video and the Bad Boot Enter the Secret Aquarium video are incredibly good for explaining methods of building, conserving, and converting hyperspeed, manipulating a held object's last position, traversal of parallel universes, object cloning, grabbing ledges above Mario's actual height, and so much more. It is fascinating watching these SM64 scientists break the game down and show not only what does work in these explorations, but also what ideas were on the table and ended up not working out in the final plan. As of the time of this recording, the A button challenge lies with 19 A presses needed to complete a 120-star run of the game. This pan-and-coac video details the remaining 19 in question. Will Super Mario 64 ever be completed without any A presses? Likely not, as techniques can require the A button to be held, so you have to at least press it at some point, and I'm not sure how you get around A presses 9 and 10, which are cannon shots, but quite literally, who am I to say? Worth mentioning is that Pan&Coic created a competition at the end of 2019 called the ABC Trials, a custom level meant to test the A pressing prowess of those who attempt to clear it. This competition had a prize of $1,000 to the first who cleared it with 0 A presses, a prize that went to Zhongyung 7192P, and whose run can be seen here. Also worth mentioning is that the ABC isn't the only horse in the stable. Pan&Coic goes over what B, Z, and other button challenges look like, how many stars are obtainable coinless, capless, and/or cannonless, and showcasing stars that are collected with no joystick movement. These categories are so much more, if not entirely solved, so it's no wonder they lack the popularity of the ABCs. But the videos detailing them still show off some incredibly wild workarounds. So now we have seen Super Mario 64 taken to its absolute tool-assisted limit. Surely this must be the end of what enjoyment we can draw from it, right? No. So on May 23rd of the year of our Lord 2020, Twitter user @megax2_ posted this Iceberg meme about Super Mario 64. An iceberg meme denotes different levels of knowledge about a subject. The deeper in the water you go, the more obscure, unknown, and usually cryptic topics get. The Super Mario 64 iceberg is no exception, and this shit took off. Mario 64 has one of the oldest and most well-known gaming urban rumors in its back pocket with the L is Real plaque, but I guess it's never too late for a smash hit reunion tour. I normally do not care about creepypastas, especially gaming-related ones, as it tends to be super hokey in my eyes, but I think the SM64 iceberg and its byproduct are killer, and I'll go over a couple reasons why in a bit. First, let's actually take a spin through the iceberg for a while. I'm not going to cover all, or really even most of these topics, but there are a couple I want to point out that I enjoy. Womp Fortress 1-Up. There is a hidden 1-Up at the back of the tower on top of Womp's Fortress. I like this because it's incredibly well hidden. The fake wall that needs to be punched to access it has no hint of being breakable, and I don't recall anything that leads you snooping for it in this area. It exists as a good example of something that would be discovered and passed around by word of mouth on the playground, as it's not essential to the game, but well enough hidden to be passed over by many people playing it. JRB Vanishing Fog. The first time you enter Jolly Roger Bay, there is this thin layer of fog over the ground of the level, and after you collect the first star, it goes away and never comes back at all. Even if you choose the first star again after clearing it, the fog does not return. It's an incredibly cool and also mysterious detail that is small enough to be missed. Rainbow Ride Village. The Rainbow Ride stage in Super Smash Bros. Melee has an odd little village in the distance at one point, and that mini village has no relation to either the stage or the original Mario 64 stage, so its seemingly random inclusion is very weird and unexplainable. Seriously, I don't get it. Wario Apparition. This is one of the big ones and an important reason why the iceberg took off, in my opinion. There are an assortment of faked images and hacks that show the head of Wario chasing down Mario, the most popular of these being one where he's hiding behind the 30-star door and chases Mario back down a long black hallway. The key to this is that the image on the iceberg and the Wario head are real, coming from a Focused on Fun 1996 presentation where Wario's head shows up and jokes around with the audience. The urban rumor is that he might appear in your game, or something hokey like that, but more on that later. The internal plexus of the castle. I just think it's cool. The idea that the internal layout of the castle does not fit in the castle as seen from the outside is, duh, video games, but someone actually overlaid the internal plexus to the castle courtyard, and I just think that's rad, man. I think it's rad as hell. The internal plexus has also become one of the biggest hotbeds when it comes to furthering the game's conspiracies out. It is seen now as a destination, some place that you can get to, parts of a hidden castle within the castle, maybe going through the mirror room to access a different dimension of the castle, so on and so forth. Every copy is personalized. Okay, this is the biggest one, and the glue that holds everything together. The idea is that the original cartridges of Mario 64 had a personalization AI in them that was able to tune aspects of the game to the individual, be that the rearrangement of level details, the pulling of beta or unused assets in the game, or other creepy changes. Nintendo tried to hide the existence of this AI after the cartridge released by putting a minimally personalized ROM on the internet for emulation and using that ROM for the eventual Virtual Console releases. We'll go into this a bit more later. Wet Dry World Negative Emotional Aura. Purposefully saved this one for last because it's the one I whole hog believe in, and looking around the web, I am not alone. Wet Dry World has always creeped me out. Happened as a young lad, happens as a grown-ass man. This level has always put the brakes on my gleeful mood when doing a playthrough. Most urban myths and creepypastas now surrounding Mario 64 come post-Iceberg, but discussions about how odd Wet Dry World are have been around for a long time, especially when it comes to the skybox of this level, which gives off this unsettling feeling of a sunken city. That, alongside the cold and soulless architecture, the overabundance of water, a staple in unsettling and creepy feelings in early 3D gaming, the oppressive swim through the underground tunnel, and the utterly contextless and unnerving empty town below the level. All of this leads to a massively different feeling from most of the levels, and even the other levels that kinda spook me out, like Dire Dire Docks or any of the Bowser levels, pale in comparison to just how much of a negative emotional aura is over this level. That said, I do need to break this one apart a little. The internet has been more and more keenly aware of how off-putting liminal spaces can be and how their effect is not exclusive to fluorescent lit pictures of 1980s office rooms. It's very possible for this feeling to exist in gaming spaces as well, as the uncanny creeping feeling from the cold, empty spaces and contextless architecture, which is pretty much the underground city to a T, can exist here as well. So there is some room for a grounded explanation, but, suspend your disbelief and, yeah, dudes, you got me on this one. I'm in hook, line, and sinker. For a better look at the Iceberg, please watch this video by Ms. Koff. They go into much better detail. So why does the Iceberg work? Here are my big 3 reasons. 1. Super Mario 64 is already kinda mad spooky. Let's not beat around the bush. Mario 64 has a bevy of scary things in it that are native to a casual playthrough. The Chain Chompin' Bob on Battlefield, the eel in Jolly Roger's Bay, the Mad Piano in Big Boo's Haunt, the Peach painting turning into a Bowser painting as the floor gives away from under you. Jesus Christ, that was so scary as a child. The infinite staircase and the music that plays during it, Hazy Maze Cave's Poison Labyrinth, and maybe more depending on your mileage. This isn't like spooky stories told around the campfire about Barbie Supermodel for the SNES. There's already a basis for spooky things in this game, and to a lot of us, it happened at a formative state. Personally, I found the exploration of 3D space mildly terrifying growing up. I was less than 10 years old when I started playing 3D platformers, and the traversal of spaces felt like magic to me. I was too young to understand skyboxes or invisible barriers. I specifically remember being terrified of swimming or flying in Mario 64, but mainly Banjo-Kazooie. I feared that if I was flying, I could just fly above the level walls and fly forever into an empty background. It's really hard to let people know just how much of a paradigm shift 3D gaming was for someone my age back then. And it left this sometimes unintentionally unsettling feeling that, video games were not supposed to give. 2. The Iceberg mixes the very real with the very fake. It's folly to write off the Iceberg's contents as all creepypasta bait. A fair amount of what's on there is actual factual information. Even some of the stuff that's in the deepest parts of the Iceberg. The Omen archive? That's a very real leak of technical information that was supposedly uploaded to the internet as omen.rar by an SGI employee. Miyamoto stole Mario 64 from Argonaut? A bit more hearsay, but still very well grounded. It's a claim based on Argonaut's Jez San saying that they originally pitched a 3D Yoshi game to Nintendo, and while it was shot down, the eventual Mario 64 retained much of the same look and feel. Argonaut would eventually bring this 3D game to life in a sense when they released Croc for the PS1. Even the Wario apparition, while mostly used as ROM-hacked fakes for creepypasta purposes, it does come from a very real Wario head Nintendo used. Good horror mixes the real and the unreal to better make the spooks more believable. No one's going to fall for, and then I opened the 1-star door, and there was a Sketlin, and it was 3 spooky, 5 me. But if you ground your urban legends in the real life, then you have something for the creepiness to sink its hooks into. 3. Every copy is personalized, allows the whole horror canon to exist and grow. I called this the glue that holds everything together for a reason. By giving a spooky explanation as to why these anomalies happen in-game, it allows for them to fester and grow. Even the passerby to the Iceberg and the SM64 horror canon can use the personalized copy idea to explain why they may have different memories of the game than others. Although, to break this down, it's just because your memories from a childhood state are flat out wrong, because memories are flat out wrong. This also explains away how the most easily obtainable copies of SM64, emulated versions, and Virtual Console releases do not have any of these anomalies showing up. Most importantly though, it's what allows for the creepypasta noodles to really flow, as stories and video hacks of heavily glitched out or personalized copies like Greenio's lost tapes or Jeff Tastic's documentation can happen. Someone can easily take a claim of a personalized anomaly and expand upon it to add to the horror canon of Super Mario 64. Obviously, your mileage may vary with all of this, but it's opened up a new mythos for fans of the game to interact with and put their own spin on. I have to admit, I had my own personalization scare when I was recording footage. When swimming through the tunnel to get to the town in Wet Dry World, additional music started playing, and I didn't remember that happening the last time I played the game, or maybe any time I played the game. So it very much spooked me more than I was expecting. And yes, I do have an original card, so maybe I have the personalization AI in it. Who knows? .5, none of this is real, but maybe we can make it real. This kind of piggybacks off the other one, but just hear me out. Video game preservation is a very real thing, as realistically there is an entropic nature to all games. All systems and carts will be lost to time, and ROMs or backups of information will allow us to continue experiencing what we were once able to. This is why emulation and game preservation is so important, with people like Jeremy Parish and Frank Cifaldi working to properly document video games as well as possible before aspects of them are lost to time. It might become more and more difficult for someone to grab an N64 and a copy of Mario 64 to play on a CRT. Emulation is the most accessible way to circumvent that. What if, and this is a big if, but what if some of these anomalies and hacks like the Wario apparition or the white-eyed chomp were put into regular old ROM files of the game and hidden among the crowd? This would obviously be disruptive to the ecosystem of preservation and would require someone to host these altered ROMs insidiously as regular ones, but the idea of someone playing SM64 for the first time on emulator and being unaware that they have a copy with these hacks hidden in them sounds so wild to me. Every copy isn't personalized, but it doesn't sound impossible to turn the urban legends into slightly more real ones. So we've covered the game and its history and popularity in speedrunning and evolution of challenge runs and newly founded horror canon. Obviously, this is the end of the video, right? Jesus Christ, no, take me now. No! MF, this video's long enough. So during the script writing of this, a frickin' gigantic leak of Nintendo documents hit the internet on July 25th of the year of our Lord, 2020. This leak, clocking in at a reported 2 terabytes in size, includes gargantuan amounts of source information for multiple Nintendo consoles and games. For brevity's sake, we'll stick to what's in Mario 64. but this leak is an insane milestone for historical and archival information about Nintendo's legacy work. So off the top, the biggest one is that L was real the whole time. There were unused assets for a Luigi model that were left in SM64's code. Obviously, he isn't real in the actual sense of the game, but he is hidden in the game files, and modders were able to piece him back together into working form. Gonna be honest, this one's a little too big because it fogs up trying to find the other information from the leak. Granted, SM64 isn't the only game with gold being dug up. There is some wild, uncompressed art and audio assets for Ocarina of Time and Star Fox 64 discovered as well. I assume that there's similar uncompressed Mario 64 assets out there. Specifically, I'm dying to see uncompressed versions of the Skybox photos. There have been some recreation of beta levels, assets, and builds that have been found as well. As it currently stands, I do not believe all the contents of the Gigaleak have been put together, but it's hard to tell because it's very scattered and kind of in between Twitter threads and some articles, but it's all completely insane and worth mentioning. So what was the point of all this? Was this just an extended gush session about a game I really love? Well, yeah, but there was a point here. As clickbaity as saying that a video game belongs in the National Archive is, I'm really not joshing around on that much. Hopefully, I've been able to showcase that Super Mario 64 has incredible range. There are many great games out there. There are many popular speed games. There are many games with cool challenge runs to them. There are games with great horror aspects or cool creepypasta mythos to them. But there are very few games that have all of them, and to this high of a degree. We're hitting the 25th anniversary of Mario 64, and the game's relevancy continues to maintain. The Gigaleak likely has more information left in it for us to see. A Switch version of Super Mario 64, alongside other classic Mario 3D platformers, is due to release within 2020. Update to the script, it happened, and it's not great? I don't know, I haven't played it myself, but the Super Mario 64 version in Super Mario 3D All-Stars is the Shindo version, which is the Chinese version of the game. It came out after the original release. It has patched out BLJs, so that's kind of weird. It also patched out So Long Gay Bowser, which I have mad feelings about.
Bye-bye!
So it's weird because I don't know of any other super easily accessible way to get the Shindo version, especially on consoles, but I kind of wish today's kids could experience So Long Gay Bowser. It would be remiss for me not to mention Super Mario 64 mods, especially since the whole reason I made this channel was to fail at doing a Let's Play of Super Mario Star Road a million years ago. But they allow new ways to play SM64. I also want to give a shout out to the SM64 SGI project, a mod to make the game look like the beautifully rubber balloony 3D renders that were used as promotional material. I think I've laid out enough reasons as to why I see this as one of the biggest landmark games in the history of the medium, and I can only hope that if you've made it this far into the video, you find some aspect of Super Mario 64 interesting enough to look into more for yourself. All that, and it's still not even in my top 5 favorite video games.